It's repair time. I didn't make a video of me pulling the alternator because it's a real pain, but I'm going to show you what's broken. Oh, look at my shelf. I've got a K5 Blazer shelf. It's all stocked up. Hope
Don't
got
forget this nice thing right here. That's a great shelf.
That's my other shelf. That's my other shelf. I pulled apart the alternator on my K5 Blazer, my giant heavy-duty metric that barely fits. And look what I found, even though I've driven this thing probably 100 miles. Look at that. Same problem I had with it 5 or 6 years ago. That brush, you'd think it would have worn through it to start charging. That's all that's wrong, is it needs a little bit of sanding on the slip ring.
What's this thing that looks like a column here?
Rectifier.
And what's that do?
It smooths the electricity, and I'm not an alternator expert. It smooths the electricity. This is the...
Those are your magnets that pick up the current,
yeah, right? The field coils. There's the regulator. And this is the diode trio that only lets electricity travel in one direction. So it turns oscillating back and forth. Like AC, it turns it into DC. That's the diode trio.
Awesome.
And if that fails, the alternator will charge less. And the rectifier, I think it smooths the electricity. I think. This is the regulator. These are the brushes that are a pain to put back in with a little brush holder. I use a little straw. Slip ring, armature. There's a bearing in here, same as the Mercedes bearing. This one sounds nice, but that's all that's wrong with it, is it's corroded. That's all that's wrong. So I'm going to take a little piece of sandpaper if I can find one. I got a spare alternator here. Here's a mini version of the heavy duty. And here's the exact same one, but there's no reason to put this one on, even though it's a giant size. Same one. As I put on, you loosen the brackets and it just squeezes in under the heater hose outlet. So I'm going to find some sandpaper. And actually, you hold the camera. And I'm going to take this over to the wire brush and jump over all the junk on the floor.
Yep. These are all his cool cars he's got.
I'm going to take the wire brush to it and see how it cleans that up. Oh, beautiful. Cleans it right up. That's all that was wrong with it. Same thing that happened 5 years ago when I had it parked all summer, but this time we used it a few times. Pulled those air streams. All that's wrong. Polish, clean up the surface area on the shaft. Don't want to get any dirt in the bearing.
Make sure you're using a brush on this. He's not using a grinding wheel. It's a brush wheel.
Yep, just a wire brush. I used to clean threads with bolts. Do the other one also.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to mention that because it looks like a grinding wheel right now.
Well, the camera can't capture it. It does frames per second or whatever it does. Digital bits per second. All that was wrong. And I drove it quite a bit. It wouldn't polish through.
And we're going to show you exactly what...
Oh, watch the grease, watch the grease. Whoa!
I don't care about grease. I'll pick it up.
Hold the camera kind of steady. No, a little too close. Takes time to focus. Don't be doing jumping jacks. Look how nice that surface is. Machined to perfection.
Now, that piece was all corroded, and that was what it was stopping from starting it and recharging.
Yep, couldn't charge the battery. It was driving around. No charge. And everything's going flying. Leave it, leave it. Horizontal camera, dirty hands. Beautiful.
All right.
Pause it for a second, the red button.
Okay, you're good.
All right, look. We pushed both springs in and both brushes, and we can actually turn the light on in motion. And I've got the brushes set back into the brush holder.
Yep, you can see it.
And a little plastic straw from a WD-40, and you push it right till it's flush.
Yep, and that straw is holding back the two brushes and the springs behind the brushes.
Push those back in and not break your brush holder. So use a pair of needle nose pliers and a screwdriver, and you just jiggle back and forth. And
battery's low.
Battery's low. So we're going to stop this for a second. 30 minutes later, I've got this thing back together. I took apart took off the nut with an impact gun, took off the pulley. There's a spacer to support the pulley, the fan, a thin spacer. Then you got to take the end frame off, and you got to tap, tap, tap it. And Kind of mangled it, but it doesn't matter. Then I greased the bearing. It felt real smooth. It just needed some grease. It was dry. So now I'm going to take out this brush holder that retains the brushes in place. Click. Oops. Spun it a few times. I shouldn't have done that. Anyways, had it stayed inside, it would have just melted. Now it doesn't spin so freely because I've packed the bearing with grease. I think I have it clocked properly. I made this bracket because this alternator is not made to fit this blazer. This is a 6.2 blazer and it uses a much smaller alternator, but this one just squeezes on this so-called heavy-duty one here. It's got these cooling slots that are open here, and it's also 10% bigger, 20% bigger. It's a 70 amp, but it's a strong 70 amp. It's not straining. So I'm going to put it back together. I'm going to throw it into this T-Ruck. But I'm not going to show it to you because the battery's going dead. Well, I'll show it to you for a minute. The battery's weak. It's always weak, and it doesn't show the battery strength until it gets to 15%. And it is going in the hole right there somehow. And I change the alternator every couple of years. And the water pump, and the water pump's leaking on the SF sub. Nice and greasy. There's my plow bracket that also holds the alternator. It doubles as the alternator plow pump bracket. So I've got to squeeze that in. It's a one-wire alternator that's wire nutted together, so you're not going to be able to watch this part because it's nasty and my trouble light doesn't work properly. So please hold. Your call is very important to us. Figured I'd give you an update. I got the alternator into the hole. What a chore. That plow pump is really in the way. And I put a new belt on because the old Made in India belt was toast. I got my bracket on and the back of the plow pump, which is the bracket right there. Then I had to put a bunch of washers in, and I grooved one of the washers. See those washers in the back of the alternator? One of them has a slot in it, so I could pry on the alternator and put that last washer in. Then I have got a pipe right above it and some electrical fittings. So this is a bracket that holds the pump together. It attaches to the diesel air silencer bracket, so those three go together. And I've got to put the alternator bolt on the top right there, and I use a nut and a bolt because the housing is stripped. And it's a chore. This plow pump makes it a lot more difficult. So I've got the battery cable on the back, and I've got it wire nutted together because this thing has a single wire excitable alternator like the hot rodders use, so it has less wiring, but in this case it's because the wiring is all mangled. So that's your update. I've got lots of nuts and bolts to put back together, and I'm going to put this thing back on my Samsung charger on an LG phone. It seems to like it. Woo, probably a good 30-45 minutes later. There's a clock on the wall there. 9:30, I got to be here at 7 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning. It's all installed, mixed up a couple of bolts. This bolt here is a self-tapping bolt, and those behind it aren't, and I mixed them up, and anyways, not a big deal, but it's on. I put a new belt on, a nice Goodyear Gatorback made in Mexico. And I got the plow pump nice and crooked like it was before. And I noticed that my air cleaner had collapsed internally again. I put a support bolt in, but what I need is somebody that runs a CNC shop and make me a bushing, because this is sucking in dirty air and making a racket. And when you get old, you don't want to hear noise. So that is supposed to be oval. It had completely crushed, and I supported it, but it crushed again. So you can't put silicone there because it'll suck it right in. But this wasn't cast when GM made this in their plastic mold with thick enough plastic. So I'm going to fire up. It's just an air silencer, but diesels run at full throttle, in case you didn't know that. There's the air cleaner right there. I don't put a lot of miles in this thing. I think I bought it with 132, and now it's got 137, 5,000 miles in 10 years. So, I'm going to put a few tie wraps on, but let's see if she fires up and charges, just like on the Flintstones. Betty and Wilma. Charge it! I've got lots of tools here, everything ready to fall off. Got my lumber ready for tomorrow. We're going to put a pitch on that roof and stop the leak. I've had it. Freaking leaking roof. Who puts a flat roof on? Flat, 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 flat as a pancake. Oh yeah. Set the throttle. Turn the light on. Whoop. And maybe one day I'll put a button on. Even that wire fell off. I used to undo the plug, but 1001, 1002, 1003, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Crank that baby up. 10 seconds on the glow plugs. It's not that cold outside. It's a couple of degrees above freezing. So she won't charge at the beginning because you have to excite it. Yahoo! She's charging. Yeah, all it was a dirty slip ring. That's what happens when you know your truck. Yahoo! And I got a new belt too. Yahoo! There's the old belt. Made in India. 48 inches. This belt was toast. Delaminating. Needs a hard life, a plow truck. It sure does. Rattle, rattle, clang, clang. Suck your hand right in. Diesels run at full throttle. They have no throttle. They are managed by the injection pump. That's what manages the diesel engine. I've got to fix my trouble light. Oh yeah, the BMW. That'll be the next video. Tomorrow when I can see outside. Anybody want to buy a BMW? Sorry, it may be sold. Flickering lights. Yes, the alternator is charging. Very good. Alrighty. Click. Now I can drive around without worrying about my battery going dead, and that's what I did a couple days ago. I drove it till it had 7 volts. I turned it off. Didn't even get a click out of the starter, but it ran. All it needs is a little bit of juice to hold the plunger open in the injection pump. Alrighty. Phew. Tomorrow is construction day. We're going to put a roof on this place. It needs it. I don't know who the hell gave a permit for the roof to be constructed flat. Little tester. I lost my favorite tester. My electrical toolbox is missing. I don't like these made in China things. Too many buttons. Okay. I'll tell you about the BMW tomorrow. I got to work on that red truck too. Put some K-seal in. Success! At 9:30 at night.